I started a stream and I just need to do one post. Make sure everything is going. Okay, good. We're live. I got that right finally. And let's see. Share. Good. Good. All right. So I'm going to just start with an introduction. Thank you for coming on the show for an interview and eventual group discussion. So can you give us just kind of a general background of your life? You don't have to go into like from birth or anything if you don't want to. And then just kind of how you got to this point. Why are you doing a lot of activism type of things? And go ahead.
All right, great. Well, my name is Katy. I go by the name AbsoluteKaty on Twitter. And my background is in film and media studies. And in studying the media, I developed a real passion for sort of how media is used to manipulate people. And it has been for, decades or ever since it was invented. And it's only really gotten worse in the mainstream media. The corporate consolidation is at just a record high with just, 6 companies controlling almost everything you see and hear. Mm. And so, and I used to do production, film production and television production. I used to produce promos for television. And I've been sort of out of media for a little while. I had to sort of get kind of a day job.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I saw sort of the 2016 election and sort of how things sort of panned out in the media that I was really just completely disturbed by what I saw. And I started following independent media people. I think the first one I saw was Lee Camp. And then I discovered Jimmy Dore and TYT. And, it's like I saw all these guys and I was like, wow, this is like where it's at. This is what is going to like really make a difference. And so I guess about 6 months ago, I started thinking like, well, maybe I should do that, Yeah. Like I've always had a like anti-establishment perspective, and ever since reading Howard Zinn and the People's History of the U.S., and I read a lot of Noam Chomsky, and I just thought, you know what, maybe I can use my media filmmaking background and my political perspective to get a message out there that people will resonate with, and hopefully they do.
Yeah. And it's hard to find time for it to just, first you got to make money, because you can't make money off of just making videos. It's not easy because you got to get a following, you got to make videos. That takes time. And is when you were working in the industry, I mean, salary, you get all of that stuff, and I don't know where I'm going with this. You're kind of set. You're just one part in a whole bunch of other people working together to make a final product. But now it's just you. You're your director, you're the actor, you're the well, I wouldn't say actor, you're the film presence, you're the producer, you're the writer. If you have something like something that you want to say, or you just take notes, you just have to free flow. You're your editor, you're your publisher. I mean, so you're doing everything. And did you take like for college, what did you take to prepare you for all of that? Or
Actually, my college education with film was really amazing, because I went to Cal State LA, which is a state school in Los Angeles, and at the time the film department was really growing, and what they taught me was like like just ground up. You're doing everything on a production,
Yes.
you know, writing, directing, sometimes starring in, you
Yeah.
know, editing. And I just loved it. I thrived there. You know, I produced all my own videos. I acted in all of them. I shot them and edited them, you know.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot there.
Okay.
Whereas I kind of think like if you go to maybe a bigger film program, they sort of want to pigeonhole you into like a role
Mm-hmm.
where they can help you sort of develop as a, you know, professional in that arena. But I'm so glad. I'm so glad for my education and what I was able to learn there, because you just learn to be sort of a one person, you know, production crew.
And so I've seen your videos, although there's only 4. Was it 4 or 5? I mean,
There's 5 now. I'm
5
working
now.
on it.
Yeah, I mean they're good quality. It's everything's like visually correct as far as getting the camera and everything good. Got like a real background. It's not like this thing. The lighting's good, and you've got your topics. You stay on point, and it's not dragged on like my show, which goes on for like 3-4 hours. So I mean, you goes directly to the point, and I think it's good. It just, you know, it's we just can't wait to see more. And a lot of people are trying to do a lot of videos, and it's just, I think it's just tough. It's, I mean,
Yeah.
if you did it 24/7, you could probably do a video every day.
Yeah.
Maybe probably 4 or 5, but if you're working part-time, it's just hard to get one in sometimes the whole week if you want to do it with the like the perfect presentation that you're okay with, like if you're a perfectionist.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and that's kind of what I wanted when I started my show, is like, you know, again, my biggest influence I would say is Lee Camp.
mhm.
You know, I love how his show Redacted Tonight is so polished. And obviously he's got a whole crew and a whole like budget and everything, but I love the production value, you know,
Yeah.
and I love the way it's, you know, he has like a whole point, and he, you know, it's a little more scripted. So when I wanted to start my show, I definitely wanted to like write for it and not just sort of ramble on, or like, you know, I appreciate a lot of the different shows that are a lot of the different indie media channels that sort of just, they'll just take an article and just start, you know, talking about it. And I don't know how much preparation goes into that, but for me, it's like I'll sit down and write out, you know, all of my points, and I'll dig and, you know, grab sources and quote things, and, you know,
Yep.
like it's almost like I write an article before I create my video.
Yeah.
And then when I shoot the video, I rewrite it again because I'm like, oh, this works better in this order, you know.
Yeah.
It's like a whole production.
Yeah, it's good because it's a journalistic approach. I
Yeah.
do a lot of my stuff is I'm just looking up stuff behind the scenes, and then I start thinking about something, and you know, I just feel like it should be shown to people, like just the raw data, someone's interpretation of it, my interpretation of it. Do we get the same results? I'm gonna open up the Zoom session so people can come in if they want to, and we'll just continue our conversation. Let's
Great.
see. I just need to paste it too. All right. Okay. Son of a gun. And where is it? There we go. Okay. People who are out there, you can now join, and we'll continue on. All right. Thanks. So what were you watching before? I mean, the mainstream news media? What were you watching before you kind of? Are you still watching, or are you kind of just watching independent media now?
I basically just watch independent media now. Unfortunately, it's impossible to get away from mainstream media because it's on everywhere. It's on in restaurants, it's on in your bank. Wait, who goes to a bank anymore?
Yeah. Elevators.
Elevators, at gas stations, it's like everywhere. It's even at like my workplace, it's in like the lobby. And so it's like I see CNN all the time and I just have to laugh because every time I look, it's like you see those like faux concerned looks on their face. Oh, we're really concerned. And oh yes, tell us about this. And it's like breaking news. Trump said this. I'm like, how is that breaking news? I mean, at a certain point, you can say breaking news so much that it's just broken. It doesn't make any sense to me. And it just looks silly. And one thing that I've really enjoyed about creating this network on social media and on Twitter and stuff is getting to talk to people from other places, other countries who all basically say the same thing. They're like, yeah, American media or US media it looks absurd from outside the US. It just looks like silliness. Like, who believes this crap? And I'm like, yeah, it's hard when you're inundated with it all the time to really see that and sort of like understand, like, yeah, this is not real. This is a corporate message being told to us, and they're telling us what to think about and how to think about it and what to talk about. It just, yeah.
So, hello, Jake. Thanks for joining us. Did you have anything to ask Katy about?
Hi, Jake.
We can't hear anything. You might have to set up your audio in your Zoom.
We can't hear you, Jake.
We can't hear you, Jake. You're gonna have to select your audio in your Zoom. It's on the bottom left. There's a mute icon right next to it. There's a up arrow. If you select that, you can select your audio selection for your mic. Anyways, while we're waiting for Jake, feel free to chime in when you got your audio set up. There's also a chat if you need to just type in something to ask a question about the Zoom setup. So Bill Clinton with the Telecommunications Act, and that was something that we were talking about previous nights. Was that the big push to where things are now, or were there more things like a precursor to that, in your opinion?
I think there were things that preceded that, but the Telecommunications Act of 1996 that Bill Clinton passed was a piece of basically deregulation that was previously unattainable for Republicans. Republicans historically have been for deregulation, to increase the power of private companies. Republicans. And the fact that Bill Clinton was a Democrat meant that he could actually pass it.
Yeah.
Because he's like, oh, I'm a Democrat, so what I'm doing is good. And it's like people who aren't maybe paying as much attention to politics, or I'm a Democrat, so what I'm doing is good.
Jake,
hold on, I'm hearing some feedback.
Okay. I think he's trying to figure it out. All right, keep going. Sorry about that.
So yeah, I think that really opened the floodgates, and it wouldn't have been able to get passed if Bill Clinton wasn't a Democrat.
Yeah. And it's they have their way about doing things like that. Like if they're a Democrat is trying to push like a Republican agenda, it's because that they're what is it when you're just kind of working with your opposition?
Complicit or
not complicit. It's like a bargaining, I don't know what you call it. It's you're working with people, so you're not just being standoffish. But then if they're not, they're just saying, you know, I'm standing my ground. So there's like no negative connotation to whatever a politician does. They just know the right things to say to what is this? I need more coffee. I'm sorry.
That's okay. This is
It's
why I edit my shows.
yes. So are
I'm
you?
like, oh, what's that word? And I'm like, oh, and then I'll fix it in post.
Yeah. But it's good practice to do this as well when you go.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Thanks for inviting me on. I definitely want to do more practice live speaking.
Yeah. If CNN called you up to do an interview, would you do that? What would you like? Do you know what they would tell you beforehand? Like saying this is our topics. Would they tell you to not say certain things, or
I would love to do a live interview on CNN or go there. I mean, honestly, just to get a sense of what it is that they would ask me to do and how they would put it together and how they would edit it after I spoke and things like that.
yeah.
I have a friend who was recently brought in to an MSNBC interview.
Mm-hmm.
He has a really great organization that advocates for more police training. So they brought him on to talk, and he said that it was just nothing like he wanted to talk about, and they edited the crap out of it, and then they didn't even air it. So it was. So I'm sure that happens all the time where they just, you know, bring people in and they'll record an interview, but then ultimately not use it depending on how they feel about it. Lee Camp had this famous interview on Fox News. I don't know if you've seen it, where he calls out Fox News for being like a parade of like idiocy or something. And because it was live, they couldn't, you know, edit it out afterwards. Yep. So it hit like live television. And he tells Fox viewers who are watching the show, he's like, just turn off the TV, just go outside, do something better.
Yeah.
But that was, I think, 2009. And since then they've done a lot also to prevent that kind of thing from happening, because if there's anything that the mainstream media wants to control, it's the narrative. Yep. So any aspect of it that they have no control over, that is not a good place for them.
And do you remember that Bernie Sanders interview where he was talking about something that they didn't want to talk about, and they cut off his mic?
Oh, cutting off the mic. That's a classic. Oh, we lost the feed. Yeah. You know.
Yeah. Or they'll cut away to sorry, we can't talk about it now. We gotta go to commercial. We'll be right back. And then we don't know what goes on behind the scenes. They're probably saying, hey, you can't say that, or we're gonna take you off. We don't know what happens behind the scenes. But it would be awesome to have like a private camera, like just something that they can't see, and just record the entire session and just see what the end result is compared to the mainstream media, how they with their end product. So Fly, is there anything you wanted to say?
Actually, I'm still reading the article by Susie, but she addresses quite a bit of the issues with the mainstream media as well.
Yeah.
So I'll probably have more after that's done.
Okay. Is there how do we backtrack? Do we evolve to something better? How do we fight the mainstream media and the powers that they have right now?
Who's the question to?
Katy, you too, Fly, anyone?
Okay. Go ahead, Katy.
All right, thanks. Honestly, I think independent media is, I mean, I've never been so enthusiastic about the state of media as I am now. Now, obviously, you know, these corporations are hitting us hard. Twitter, Facebook, places that are that we're using our voices are hitting back against us. But there are other platforms coming out. I'm on Steemit. If you're not on Steemit yet, you need to be on Steemit. There's other social media platforms like Minds and Gab. I'm on Gab and Minds. I haven't really got into them too much, but they both seem like viable possibilities going forward. But yeah, I think indie media is definitely where it's at as far as fighting against corporate media, because honestly, I mean, we could all, if everyone in America just shut off their televisions and said, you know, no more to corporate media, we're on to you. We know that you're just the propaganda arm of the state. You know, we could change the narrative in the US. We could change how we communicate to each other and how information gets out. I think that gives me a lot of hope.
What about people or corporations that seem to start pushing the mainstream media narrative? Like, for example, what's her name on MSNBC? Rachel Maddow. She was like an indie media person. She was pretty progressive and things like that. Had podcasts, and then she made it big. Even TYT, you know, they during the Bernie campaign, they were supportive of him, and then all of a sudden, when Bernie's campaign just kind of ended, they just went all in for Hillary Clinton. Is there anything that can be done about that? Is it just the natural evolution of people who grow into like a small market to a big market?
I think, unfortunately, in a lot of ways, it is the natural progression. I mean, you can't really blame Rachel Maddow, or you can't really single her out. I mean, yes, you can call her a sellout, and she's definitely sold out. I mean, she's making $30,000 a day to sit there and read lines and tell us nonsense. Yeah. So she's definitely a sellout, but you can't really single out. You know, I've seen a lot of people say, oh, get Joy Reid fired, or hold these individuals accountable. And to say that sort of negates the reality of the corporate structure and how it works, because Rachel Maddow, they just get somebody else in there who will toe the company line and say what they want them to say. It's a part of it. They're just part of a machine, and that machine is the problem. And the more we fixate on individuals that are, spewing nonsense like, oh, Jake Tapper or whatever, the more we miss the whole point. And that is that the corporate media has a corporate bias. They push for war because they're funded by war profiteers and banks. And so they have they're not in the public interest. There is nothing about them that owes us as the public anything. So the more we can sort of understand that, and that it's not about individuals and that it's actually this corporate machine, I think the more we can sort of start freeing our minds from that paradigm.
What about RT America? I know you're a fan of Lee Camp, and there's a lot of people, me included, I like watching RT America. I think some of their stuff is right on. Hold on one second. Could someone? There's some feedback.
I believe it would be Jake.
Okay.
Jake, can mute?
Okay, go ahead. I'll mute Jake. Okay, he's got it. Fly, did you want to say anything? Katie, Jake?
Well, a lot of it really boils down to what Elizabeth Lee Voss has already said. Replace one, you're going to have 100 more waiting in line. So they'll find somebody else that's willing to step up into that position, like Katie was saying, into a machine. It is important, though, to expose when there's an organization that is misleading. That's a part of what Susie's article is really about, and how people are trying to change the history and their organizations behind it. Looking at the connections right now as we speak of the EFF and not the FPF that seem to be pushing against or very hard against WikiLeaks. A lot of this is divide and conquer. And so with that divide and conquer, the moment you're seeing people connecting to each other, you're seeing the people moving in this direction of being able to try to grab the truth themselves and share that truth with other people. You see this divide instantly thrown in there again. They do not want to have the truth thrown out there. And they definitely don't want you to spread the truth if you do come up with the truth.
But I mean, so RT is a Russian corporate and government sponsored media company.
Russian government.
Was that?
Russian government.
Russian government. Is it also corporatized, or is it all Russian government funded and owned?
I believe it is strictly Russian government that's funding them, but I could be wrong on that.
Okay. So what are your thoughts on that, Katy, of just a country funded propaganda? I mean, like, we do know that Russia throws propaganda, especially to its own people, but for the American audiences, they might not want to push that agenda because, hey, if the truth hurts enough, why even fake it?
Well, I think you know, and I don't know a ton about RT and their structure and things like that, but I know Lee Camp has said explicitly many times that nobody tells him what to say, and I believe him. I also believe Abby Martin, who's also said similar things, and when she was working for RT America, and I think there's probably a lot like sort of a we can help each other kind of thing going on. I mean, obviously, you know, for Russia, it's beneficial for them to have people telling the truth to have Americans tell the truth about American government to Americans.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's beneficial for Americans who know the truth to be able to disseminate that information to Americans. And RT is the only network where you can do that. So you see people like Chris Hedges go there, and now Larry King is there, because there's nowhere else for their voice if they're going to be saying certain things that are against the establishment narrative.
Yeah, I just feel that's so ironic that they have to go to a Russian-owned news media company in order to say whatever they want. They can't do it in the U.S.
Right. Well, and remember, propaganda, especially when you talk about, you know, it seems like the U.S. is using the Nazi Germany propaganda playbook. It works best against your own people. Mm-hmm. Yep. So that's essentially what we're seeing in the mainstream media and all of the, you know, the fact. You know, when you see every single news outlet saying the exact same thing, be wary.
Like the local news, have you seen that? Like videos of local news all over the country, kind of saying the same exact thing.
Yeah. Well, it's just content. It's lazy reporting. I mean, not even so much lazy, but it's cost effective, and you have to remember these are corporations, and so they worry about cost. So it's more cost effective to just get like a feed of stories that they can just parrot as if they're coming up with them themselves, instead of paying people to research or do actual investigative journalism or talk to people on the street and find out what people are thinking about or care about. It's none of that. It's just everything's sort of top down and directed in that manner.
And how can journalists, like small journalists, like local stations or just people themselves, go out and investigate things when they just keep getting blocked by either local law enforcement or state enforcement or federal enforcement, or they won't let them in, they don't have the proper credentials? And so how it's like a big club that George Carlin said, and we're not in it. So basically we're trying to figure out this big puzzle that the establishments created, and we're trying to find it out by just figuring out the outside pieces. That's us. We're all, you know, we're all these small puzzle pieces trying to figure out what's that big picture inside, because nothing's transparent. How do we get to that point? Is it always just going to be people on the inside just have to leak things, and journalists have to provide an outlet and try to keep them confidentially safe? I mean, but then is that, I mean, that's almost like they're stopping that even. They're I don't know. I don't know.
Well, journalists have always faced opposition from, you know, authorities.
Mm-hmm.
The difference being journalism used to be where, you know, these, you know, reporters would have the backing of their newspaper to go and, you know, poke around where they're, you know, not welcome.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays journalists don't even do that, because they don't have that encouragement from their news outlets. They're fed stories to report on, and so there's no incentive for it, even if they wanted to.
Yeah.
So that's why you have people that are these independent journalists like Elizabeth Lee Voss and Caitlin Johnston and Susie Dawson creating their own, you know, journalism networks. I mean, that's exactly what I was talking about before about indie media and how it's so important, because all of these corporate media outlets are going to operate in the same way.
Yeah.
And it's to protect that big club. The big club that George Carlin's talking about is basically the owner class, the people who run everything, and including the messaging about what we're supposed to care about and what's really going on. Those corporate media outlets are going to protect those interests.
Chad, did you have anything to ask or add on?
Yeah. Like you were speaking about replacing, like if it was Rachel Maddow suddenly wasn't playing ball, they just put somebody else in her place. Mm-hmm. I guess, you know, I try to look at it as maybe making an example of somebody and creating a narrative or a way to where people would be afraid to lie, you know, to the public. You see what I'm saying? Like use somebody as a you know, guinea pig or somebody to make example of. And maybe we have to take them down one at a time, but let them know that we're coming for them. And even here's the thing, even if I guess my argument is, if we find the right person to go after, they're going to pull everybody else down when they're falling too. You know what I mean? Like as far as strategy goes.
I mean, not necessarily. I mean, the corporate media entity could bow to pressure from the public and say, yes, you know, Joy-Ann Reid is just appalling. We are appalled. And they can use that to say, look, we're on your side. And they're not. They are just going to replace her with somebody who, at very least, is just on the surface better than Joy-Ann Reid. You know, right. But ultimately, when it comes to what they're talking about and more importantly, what they're not talking about. You know, I mentioned this in one of my videos where what happens is, you know, they'll turn the discussion into, okay, we're going to go to war. How should we go to war? Should we go to war with more troops? Should we ally with Saudi Arabia for this war? Should we split costs? Blah, blah, blah. The idea that we wouldn't go to war at all is nowhere in the discussion. And that's the problem. They frame what we think about, how we think about it, and what we're allowed to feel if you're for or against something. They tell you what your opinion is if you're for something or against something, and all other opinions are not allowed in this discussion. And that's the problem.
Yeah. I noticed that a lot. They'll have generals or ex-generals or ex-CIA, they're specialists that they have on, and they talk about how can we win this war. That's the first question out of their mouth. It's like, not should we go to war, it's so how do we win.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you don't think by like going after singling people out and destroying individuals' careers that would be one way to put pressure. Even singling out the people, the CEOs of some of these companies, such as YouTube. I mean, you know, the what they're doing from the demonetization and the strikes and the silencing progressive voices. And I mean, the evidence is clear; it's out there. I mean, if we organized, a huge group of people to just throw a lot of attention at it, it's going to make people have to have the conversation. I don't know. Go ahead.
I mean, I have two thoughts on that. So the first thought is like, you mentioned like the CEO of YouTube, and one thing to remember is that YouTube is just part of a corporation. First of all, it's like a subgroup of Google, which is also a subgroup of Alphabet now. So it's like this huge, massive corporate entity. And positions like CEO are not set in stone. I mean, the board of directors ultimately, and the shareholders ultimately decide if the CEO or anybody who's an executive at Google or YouTube is going to stay in place. And the shareholders care about one thing: stock price and growth, and if they get enough pressure that, oh, you know what, having this CEO is bad for business, it's bad for optics, let's just get rid of him, and then we can just keep operating as usual, put in somebody else that maybe, won't be as abrasive, or, but ultimately nothing will change. I mean, that's one of the problems with, our capitalist system, is that it's growth oriented, and it is unsustainable because you can't show growth, till infinity without it collapsing at some point. And yet that's what the stock market demands. So, okay, so that was the one point. And then I think as far as being able to protest these platforms, I think the greatest thing that we could do as individuals collectively is to move to a different platform and take away the revenue from YouTube, because they're so big. I don't think that kicking out their CEO or even 6 CEOs will make a meaningful difference in terms of how they're working to suppress dissenting voices, especially because the dissenting voices that we would need in order to be doing something like that to begin with would be like silenced in a heartbeat on YouTube.
My 2 points to add to yours is the majority of the stockholders are the very wealthy. Not only is it just wealthy individuals, but wealthy corporations that are like
holding companies.
Yeah. So I mean, you're just replacing a figurehead for CEO. I mean, you got the board of directors, you got the majority stakeholders. They're all super wealthy. It's just the CEO really doesn't do much. They just.
Oh, okay. So.
Hold on, and then the second one is, I agree we have to move away, but I also want people to stay and keep saying the things that they want to say, and just keep showing how YouTube is shutting them down, because we still need to show people that they keep shutting people down as we're moving to different platforms, and they see why we're moving to the different platforms. All right, sorry, go ahead, Chad.
I lost mine. What was the first one? What was the first point?
The stockholders, wealthy.
Oh yeah. Okay, yeah. So basically, what I want to do, or I think what needs to be done, is to pinpoint these people, because again, it's like the corporations are just the game. It's how they protect themselves so they're not liable personally. And then you got your board of directors. It's the structure of how it's set up. So we have to make sure that we put the pressure and expose the right people in order to make other people around them nervous and uncomfortable. It's like when the divide and conquer thing has to happen with all the establishments, identities. There are little groups, the mainstream media, that kind of thing. We have to, put them on blast in a way that I mean, it literally destroys their career. I mean, I want to expose people to the point of like wall of shame type,
I don't know. I mean, just look at Bill O'Reilly. He had that happen to him. He's still got millions of followers that probably watch him still.
If I can add in for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always a big fan of shining a little light on people that like to play around in the shadows. So I'm very much for exposing them. As to just moving to another platform, that's exactly what they want you to do. You think that they have a problem with you leaving and going to another platform. It's much the same as people believing that bankers are going to willingly give up their control over the monetary system of the planet. They're still going to do that. You are not absolutely necessary. They'll show you how absolutely unnecessary you are, and you're doing their job for them much easier if you just decide to leave and don't speak out on the platform that you're currently on. So you're giving into that pressure that they want you to give into. So that's a reason why I'm not for just moving to another platform and just abandoning this one. Though I would probably abandon this one, or I would lessen the dependence on this platform.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I completely agree with that.
So politics, and now we've gotten all the media stuff out of the way. What do you think?
Hardly. We've scratched the surface.
We scratched the surface. I mean, there's so much. Is there what are your important, like, what's the biggest fight you think in politics right now? Is it like voting, fraud, whatever? I can't think of the right term. Is it just getting the corruption out of our politicians? Is it the private corporatization of the DNC, RNC? So I mean, all that primary stuff is pretty much a sham. Is it diving deep into like Second Amendment or military, all the wars, healthcare?
I mean, I kind of in the political arena, I'm kind of with this like hierarchy of needs. So to me, the most important things are getting everybody healthcare and then dealing with wealth inequality. Because I think that Americans are struggling right now. They're hurting all across the country. And, especially with healthcare. I mean, it's just so demoralizing if you're just hanging on and living paycheck to paycheck and, you, heaven forbid, you break a leg or something, it's just awful. It could, I have a friend who I worked with, and great guy. And he died last year at Thanksgiving because he was having chest pains and he didn't want to go to the hospital because of the hospital bills. And he had a heart attack in his sleep and he died. And I think that is just absolutely, we need to fix that first.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry about that. That sucks. But I tell my wife the same thing. If I got cancer, I'm not going to go to the hospital to get it treated. It's just going to cost too much. So yeah. I'm just going to die. Because it's better off.
Unacceptable.
Yeah.
We're the richest country the world has ever known. And and people are dying because they can't get a flu shot. I mean, or just get care. And then we're fed through the media that, oh, Canada's care sucks. Nobody likes it. Nobody talks about it. But like, even if they have to wait in long lines, I'm sure if you're on your deathbed, you're not sitting there going, well, at least I didn't have to wait in a long line,
And the lines are probably based off of what's more important. Like if someone who has something more immediate, they're going to get the cut in front of other people who might just be coughing and just have a bad case of a flu.
Sure.
But
that's something that's not talked about enough.
Yeah.
At all. Like, did you see Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All town hall?
Which one?
The one, I don't know, maybe it was a month ago or so.
I didn't watch that one.
It was really good.
He had hard time watching Bernie. Like,
yeah,
Okay. So Bernie Sanders, 2020. If he's going after the 2016 primary dropout, would you vote for him in 2020, or if he reverted back into the pre-2016 Bernie Sanders? I mean, which one do you prefer, and would you still vote for Bernie over Trump or Hillary?
Oh God, yes. Like, what the F?
Yeah.
Especially Hillary. That woman is like evil incarnate.
Yeah. Everyone who kind of woke up during Bernie is pretty much adamant about that with Hillary Clinton.
I mean, I think there's a lot of problems with Bernie, and I you can point to a lot of things that are alarming and like, oh boy, what's going on with Bernie? This is not cool, especially with some of the things he says about Russia, and especially the things he says on mainstream media. But when you look at his videos and his appearances and things that he does outside of mainstream media, it's like a totally different message. He's on point with Medicare for all. He's on point with free college tuition. He supports teacher strikes. He's still doing sort of all the Bernie things that he's been doing for the last 30 plus years. And it's really, really only in the mainstream media that he spouts all of this like bullshit that's alarming people. So it's obviously alarming and gives me a lot of pause. And like I say, well, I'll say this, I'll wait until 2020 before I make any decisions, because I want to see what's going on in the political landscape and who's running, who are the Democrats gonna prop up and pull up from out of nowhere to pretend they're progressives. But what was I gonna say? I lost my train of thought.
No, that's good. Okay, so who thinks that Katy voted in the general for Jill Stein? I think she might.
I'm a scratch man. Jill Stein?
So who did you vote for in 2016? You don't have to say if you don't want to.
All right, so let me preface this by saying, I voted for Nader in 2000 over, who was it? Al Gore?
Yep.
This was the Bush Gore down to like, 10,000 votes, and the freaking Florida Supreme Court ultimately decided it. I voted for Nader, and I was shamed for 15 years straight over it by people in my circle. So in 2016, sad to say, I voted for Hillary in the general.
Just so you don't get the 15 years of.
No, you know what? I'll never do it again. I will never let anybody shame me for my vote again. Ever, 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 ever.
It didn't matter.
I admire people that voted for Jill Stein, and I deeply regret voting for Hillary. But that was.
Don't worry, we won't give you a lot of grief. What's this?
Well,
You can't shame me.
See, there's a difference. Like, you have to separate, make a distinction. Like, voting, people vote like in a strategy wise. They try and go all this chess moves and vote blah blah blah. You know, as opposed to somebody supporting somebody all the way. Like, a lot of people voted Trump was just as a protest vote against the establishment because of, you know. So there was a lot of different reasons. I mean, I voted for Jill Stein, but I thought it kind of important to, you know, to make that distinction, you know, because I don't always argue with people about who they voted for, because, you know, it's one thing to push, you know, somebody to vote. You know, I can argue my point against that, but I'm not going to argue who you voted for. For me, does that make sense? Like the act of it, you know, that's, you know. Like,
so if you had a do-over, Katy, would you vote for Hillary again in 2016? I mean, even though I voted for Jill Stein, I'm kind of debating. I might have even just written down Bernie Sanders.
Yeah. I would have voted for Jill Stein in 2016 if I could go back. You know, because there's a compelling argument for voting for who you want and getting Jill Stein or the Green Party or a third party enough percentage of the vote to matter in future elections.
Yeah.
And that was something that I didn't really think about at the time. And, you know, not enough information was out there about it to enact that kind of level of participation.
But do you feel like Bernie is enabling, like he's participating? Because he made the comments like he knew that it was going to come down to where she was going to get the nomination, you know. But do you think he knew ahead of time that she was in control of the DNC, like the whole time?
I'm not sure. I'm sure at some point he figured it out. Especially during his race in 2016, as you know, as he's filling stadiums and getting, you know, zero coverage. I'm sure he must have figured it out, you know, and you know, it's easy for us to be sort of speculate on, like, oh, well, he should have done this or he should have done that. But like, I can't even imagine being in his position, you know, being in politics for 30 plus years, having lived through the civil rights movement and McCarthyism. And here we are in 2016, and the corruption is as bad as ever. You're reaching all of these people just through grassroots, not like completely outside of the mainstream system. I mean, what must that be like to then find out that this apparatus is like actively working against you, not even just like not giving you, you know, your equal part, but actively working against you. Yeah. And how do you deal with that? What do you do? What's your strategy? Because, you know, I don't know what I would do.
Yeah. So and all the money you raised.
So you don't think he knew? So like the way that they were operating from before, like to me, it almost seems at this point like Bernie knew he was going to have to from the beginning, regardless. You know,
gonna have to what?
To concede. They're going to have to do the Clinton, like from the beginning. Even I don't think he even thought, even if he got enough votes, you know, if that makes sense, because I don't know if, when it comes to 2020, I can't vote for him because his threshold is the DNC. I mean, he didn't even fight it. Like, it came out that he's cheated and all this kind of stuff. He knows he's got the base. He knows he's got the people, but he didn't fight it. And then he's scared of, you know, Trump, you know, when that's what they're doing. It's like one of the things. When was that released? When it talked about elevating Trump? Was that weekend, or was that later on during the November drip or the October drip thing?
I can't remember. I think it was with the DNC leak that came out. You know, the Russians hacked it and leaked it to WikiLeaks because he's a Russian agent. God, what tripe that is. No, I do think it was in the DNC leaks, but obviously with any of those leaks through WikiLeaks, it takes people a little while to sort of sift through it all because it's just a raw data dump. So people might not have been sort of aware of it right away. So as far as Bernie Sanders and the 2016 versus 2020 campaign, it sort of reminds me of the when he told the story about first getting into politics. He ran for, I think it was like mayor of some little town in Vermont, and he ran and got people excited, and he lost. And he was like, okay, well, we got a hell of a lot more votes than we thought we would, you know? And then he ran again and he won that time, you know? And this happened several times during his career. So as far as going into a political race and not winning, it doesn't strike me that Bernie is the kind of guy who's like, oh, well, I didn't win. Oh, well, you know, he's like, wow, well, we got a hell of a lot more votes than I thought we would.
But don't you think even if he won, that he would still push the establishment narrative? Because I mean, he's even doing it now. He's been doing it. Like, would you not be worried that basically he's not going to make any real change? Because because he hasn't showed us that he's not even vocal about being cheated in any real way. Like, he's like, we got to look forward.
Yeah, but what would he gain by being vocal about being cheated?
Well, I mean, how can you stop? How can you prevent? First of all, the election is null and void because of that. I mean, it's a sham anyways. It's a scam. It's all a scam. So if we don't talk about how they cheated and how it's going on and what the implications were in the leak, then we're not going to be able to move forward and say, okay, how can we change what's going on? Because people are so up in arms about Trump. The left is all fired up about Russia, and Trump, but they're not paying attention to, how we got that, what's the reason that we're there? Why? And I feel like we can't look back is just kind of an excuse, because we look back on everything else. Like, when you talk about, we have to learn from our mistakes. Look at Prohibition. We have to be able to draw the comparison of how the police were in Prohibition to the police are now. They're given a narrative, a job, and the policies literally pit people against each other, create criminals, and we're left fighting over, people making money. The Kennedys, that's how they fucking made their fortune, was off bootlegging, and we don't think anything's wrong with bootlegging now, but at the time, people were dying, like, and you couldn't be against the cops. Same thing,
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I don't think it does anybody any good not to look back. In fact, that's how we get into these issues to begin with. I mean, if you look back at the first Red Scare starting in 1917 with the Bolshevik Revolution, it almost happens every 40 years like clockwork. Oh, there's a new Red Scare. Hey, because this playbook really works. It's great for silencing dissent and keeping people who are, political activists that want, to cut wealth inequality and make things more equitable for everyone. It's a great way of demonizing those people and being able to shut them up. So definitely looking back is important, but what I was wondering is like I think it's easy to sort of slap Bernie's wrist and be like, you didn't do this, or why aren't you talking about this? But what I wonder though is what could really be gained by him talking about DNC. I mean, other than being completely blacklisted from mainstream media.
If I can jump in real quick.
Yes.
Yeah, please.
We've already seen this happen with Andrew Jackson and the Rainbow Coalition, where the people were herded, the people that were very civil-minded were very much herded, and then given to the caucus, and it failed then. So what we saw again was another herding of all these people that are very civil-minded, very progressive-minded, herded to Hillary. Had the DNC primary not been revealed to be rigged, as it was through Julian Assange, is there any doubt in your mind that more and more people would have jumped onto that herding into the Hillary camp? Is there any doubt in your mind? Look at how many people just decided not to vote for her because of how corrupt she was shown to be in the DNC leaks. So this was another attempt at trying to get that Rainbow Coalition going in order to herd everybody over to the least favored candidate, because they had no choice. It's Trump or voting for somebody that has killed millions of people, in my opinion. Somebody's literally killed millions of people through her actions as Secretary of State.
Yeah, that's absolutely valid. That's why Julian Assange and WikiLeaks are so important. What he's done, and the fact that he's been locked up for years for that role that he plays is so noble, in my opinion. You're absolutely right. I think if WikiLeaks did not exist, exposing all of those lies and all of the the public and the private position for things, and her strategy to essentially give us Trump and then say, oh, look, he's so bad, you don't want that. I mean, it's amazing. And
if Hillary really feared Donald Trump, if Obama truly feared Donald Trump, if Bernie Sanders truly feared Donald Trump, then why did they elevate him?
Yeah.
Right. Well, and
oh,
go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, what I was gonna say is, I mean, what's there to gain for Julian Assange? I mean, I think he kind of knew what he was getting himself into, but I mean, it's not like he was going to be, you know what, I'm going to leak all this stuff and I'm going to make hundreds of millions but live inside an embassy for a couple, maybe a decade or two. I mean, it's like if I was in that position to leak government documents for people to know, I feel like I'm probably not going to gain anything out of it. So why would I do it unless it's just for the greater good?
Don't forget, it's a choice between somebody who is wanting to drone you and somebody else that's not wanting to drone you.
Yeah.
This is somebody who openly discussed droning the embassy in the middle of London.
Yeah. And
that gives, I mean, it shows like her they care not about lives, period. The way she talked about Gaddafi and stuff like that. The whole point though with the media blackout is, even during the primary there was a media blackout. The media blackout itself was one of the reasons why he gained so many followers, because it was an internet storm of the way people shared the information, because that's how people got on board. I mean, it was flooded with memes, flooded with people and good vibes, and all these different groups are coming out of here, people sharing all sorts of stuff. The energy was put towards it. So, Bernie, he could have easily operated in that realm, easily have made the switch, because he had the following. Plus he had the email list. That whole email list, it just, when it becomes, corporate and typed and, it's fake.
Look, as far as Bernie, he has his own sense of honor, I would say. I mean, he said that if he lost, he would support Hillary Clinton. in her run.
But it was cheated, though. Doesn't that make it null and void? I mean, like,
he may not have known at that time he was cheated, and it's still up in the air for him at least. Because what does it matter if the DNC fraud lawsuit doesn't go through, it fails, whatever? I mean, he's got nothing to go on. I mean, I guess it's just like Russia, just nothing to go on. But I mean, he at least we could follow that. You know, he did what he said he would do during that primary. And so far, he's done it.
If
come 2020, go ahead, Fly.
If Donna Brazile is to be believed, she said that she warned Bernie before all of this. So if she's even giving a shred of truth that she warned Bernie, and we haven't heard Bernie or any of Bernie's representatives dispute that fact, we haven't heard him dispute any narrative of any type, then he actually knew beforehand.
Yeah.
Now, when was that? Because I was just thinking about that. Because when Donna Brazile published that piece in her book about discovering that Hillary basically put the DNC into debt slavery. Basically, they pulled an economic hitman move on the DNC. Do you know when exactly Donna Brazile told Bernie about this?
I myself didn't read the book. So okay. I am going by hearsay.
Okay. Well, I think it was during the primary, but I don't know if it was before the primary. I mean, I'm not sure
before
either.
The convention.
Before the convention. Oh, okay.
Because Debbie got kicked out at some point. When did Debbie get kicked out of the chair? Because that's when.
That was the first day of the convention, because she got kicked off of or she resigned and turned around, and Hillary rehired her as her campaign manager.
Oh, yeah.
God, that's right.
Oh my goodness.
So they do it right in front of you.
Yeah.
And then you have all of these people that are going to fight you and argue with you that this murdering person that is attributed for all of these deaths in Libya, in Syria, in Iraq, all of these deaths that are attributed to her, and you're saying to other people, but Trump talked about grabbing somebody by the pussy. Are you kidding me? We're talking murder versus somebody talking about sexually assaulting somebody. And you're saying that you have a question in your mind over which one is more devastating?
Right, absolute.
People are dying around this woman. She was Secretary of State. Her purpose in that position was to decide on who lives and who dies. And she picked a lot of death.
Gleefully.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Gaddafi, that video.
That kills me.
Game we saw, he died.
Ha ha ha. You see the remix of it, the song?
That's just.
But again, please do not consider this an endorsement for the Republicans at all. Mm-hmm. Please remember Iraq, weapons of mass destruction. They're just as capable of lying. They are just as guilty of lying as the Democrats are. They are both horrible.
Yeah.
So I would advocate for a third party over either of those two parties.
Yeah.
I'm with you 100%. I think this corporate duopoly, it's all just, I mean, it's like a wrestling match, WWE or something, where the two guys come out and they're like, I'm going to kick your ass, Insano. And the other guy's like, you're going down. I'm going to get your mom or whatever. And then they both wrestle and they both get paid.
Yep. And then they go to the same locker room and go, hey, that's
yeah.
good.
Oh, hey, how's your family? Yeah. Like, I'm going to go to your kid's wedding and stuff. It's like that's how the Republicans and the Democrats are. In public, they're like, oh yes, we must defeat Trump. We must defeat the Democrats or whatever. And then, or defeat the Republicans. And then the Democrats sit there and vote with the Republicans or give Trump more power. And it's like, dude, you're so full of shit. You're all working for the same big club and, the same corporate donors, big bank donors, Wall Street, insurance companies to screw us all over. And you're putting on this big show that makes us think that, or at least, you know, a lot of people are waking up, thank goodness, but it makes people think that they're really making a decision at the ballot box, and they're really not.
Exactly. It's the same interest behind the scenes, the deep state that's controlling everything.
Exactly.
We see the same thing from Bush's policies into Obama's policies, and now we're seeing the same thing into Trump's policies. So nothing changed there except for the willingness of the candidate in order to kill more people.
Yeah. So it's been so we've been going on for about an hour, 20 minutes. Do you want like a end of 10 minutes, or do you want to just keep it going? However you feel, Katie.
Yeah, 10 minutes sounds good.
Okay.
I'm getting kind of hungry.
Yeah, two things that I want to say is like we talked about a deep state playbook that we could work on. I think that's a good idea because that playbook hasn't changed for probably over a century. So I think that would be a good idea. Just kind of, yep, this is the play. This is how it's going to be executed, and they're doing it now. So we can always reference that into an actual document or book.
Easier for people to process in real time when they see it happening and how they maneuver.
So let's see if we can work on that offline. I've got a lot of things going on. You probably do too. So we'll figure out a time to do that.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Second one is, I mean, we can just be tuned out, right? Like I would just, if all this didn't happen in 2016, I would have probably just kept making fishing videos, martial arts videos, like survivalist type of videos. But I'm spending all my time doing these videos. So what would you be doing if it wasn't, if you didn't feel like an activist need, like waking up in 2016? Like, what would you just make videos of, like sewing, cooking, fighting? I
would make like satire videos. I always
comedy.
made, you know, comedy, you know, silly, goofy videos.
Yeah.
I made a lot of like fake commercials or, you know, just silly things with my family. I have a big family and they're all like willing guinea pigs. So that's always helpful when you're making videos that you have to shoot and write and direct and edit yourself. So yeah, but I mean, this election was definitely a big wake up call. I think I'm not alone in saying that, you know, when we, you know, voted for Obama, we thought, oh wow, this is going to really change things. And you know, frankly, I sort of tuned out when he got into office. I was like, all right, yay, we won.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm alone in that. And unfortunately, that's why we ended up with Trump as our president. And frankly, I am so glad. And I hate Trump. I think he's despicable. I never in a million years would ever vote for him. But I am so glad that he won. Because it meant that Hillary lost. And you know, and we get to be part of this revolution going forward. It's great.
Do you think she's going to run 2020? I think she is.
You think she is?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I suck at predictions. But
she is.
Nice.
I mean, they're still trotting her out there. If you've seen, like, she had the speech for was it Golden Globes? And then she'd be doing like book readings in like response to Donald Trump. Yeah, I think there's just a lot of attention towards her. Kevin, did you have anything you wanted to say or ask?
No, not right now.
Okay. All right. So it's getting to be that time. Is there anything that you want to end it on, Katie? A talking point or anything you'd like to say? I mean,
just to stress once again, you know, that the mainstream media is it's just nothing but propaganda, and it has absolutely no value. In fact, advertising, which is basically, it grew out of what's called public relations, and public relations grew out of the need to rebrand the term propaganda after Nazi Germany, because propaganda had such a bad taste in people's mouths. So public relations has a direct lineage to propaganda.
Yeah.
There's nothing normal about companies and corporations telling us what to think about and how to think about them, and advertisers using our emotions to sell us things. And so I just advocate at all times, just be aware that the mainstream media is not there for the public interest. It's not there to inform you. It's there to, number one, sell your eyeballs to their advertisers so that they can increase their revenues and growth, and also to function as the propaganda arm of the deep state and the government and the corporatocracy that exists. So just stay away from it. Friends don't let friends consume corporate media.
Yeah. I've totally shut out like I'd say almost a year, 6 to 7 months. Like I had cable and I didn't watch anything except for like a few shows. And then we realized, you know what? Since we don't watch it, let's just not pay for it. And like we saved like $70 plus, and I have like crazy internet speeds. So, but now the war's migrated, or I wouldn't say war, it's a battleground.
Yeah.
The battleground is on these platforms for speech. That's our battleground until we get to the war, which will end up being using our Second Amendment, not our First. And that would be scary.
Well, it also might be the First still, because the First also has the right to assemble.
Yeah. So
that doesn't necessarily entail using the second one.
Yeah, maybe.
True.
All right.
Well, okay. One other thing that I'd like to say, because just recently in this last week, with Twitter's new algorithm to target hateful speech, which obviously uses an AI bot that determines what hateful speech is without any context. I've had between that and then just like the targeted, the people who sort of like push your buttons until you say something that's, mildly questionable, and then they massively report you. I've had a lot of friends get banned from Twitter and various social platforms. People are losing their YouTube privileges a lot lately, much more than before. So I would say it's important to have some real life connections with your network on social media, whether it's just exchanging, a cell phone number or an email, just so that you can contact people should you, end up getting banned or suspended for some amount of time. Yep,
that's a good idea. You have my email, I have yours. If anything happens, hell, I'll air it.
I'll be your buddy. It's the social media buddy system.
Yeah. I mean, it's and also we're getting into fighting the deep state, and I'm sure they don't like it. So like we'll say, hey, I don't want to commit suicide. I don't do drugs. I'm not going to overdose on anything.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't have a double barrel pistol, so I won't have 2 suicide holes in my head.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy that we actually have to think about it and say it just so if it happens. I mean, that's usually the journalists are usually the first to go in a authoritarian or dictatorship, because they just look at Russia even and just all the craziness with the journalists. So you just have to be careful.
Yeah. And I know it seems a little grim to think about that or whatever, but we can't be naive. We can't, act like, oh, this is just, we're just fighting people on Twitter. It's like there are huge apparatuses involved behind all of these, you know, all of these organizations, and they're just so far reaching, and they have so much pull. It's like they could pull any of us from our homes and have us committed and say that we're crazy and we are not allowed to have guns.
That would be the Baker Act, where they can say you're crazy for no reason, no cause, no nothing, and detain you for up to 72 hours, if I remember it correctly. But they want to expand that, which is insane, because even under the current Baker Act thing, what was it, 98% of them didn't warrant an incarceration in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's already a monstrous number of, this is all bullshit. It's just like, why the fuck do we have a FISA court? 98% get rubber stamped, or what was it, 99.8 or something like that? A ridiculous number. It's like, what the fuck? This is a formality court. This has nothing to do with actually doing anything. You're just stamping crap and saying, oh, it's all good. Don't worry, people.
Yeah, well, that's exactly why the more visible we can be, the more actually connected to each other we can be. You know, it's like I've been reaching out to people in my network and trying to, you know, say, hey, are you in the area? Let's get together. You know, there's a group of us that are going to go see Jimmy Dore at the end of the month. You know, just, you know, making those connections more visible, more public. You know, so things like that can't operate in the shadows. Mm-hmm. It's like people will notice if you're missing. People will notice if, you know, you're not depressed at all, you're doing great, and then all of a sudden you're committed. You know, like these things are important for us to keep in mind. And just with that whole like mental illness thing, or being committed against your will, you know, it's like I see, you know, like with this whole Parkland shooting, and then the mainstream media, you know, creating that narrative of, oh, okay, let's make sure that we take away guns from mentally unstable people. And then, you know, you hear Paul Ryan talk about, oh, well, let's take away guns from people who aren't law-abiding citizens. Well, all you have to do is commit people, call them crazy, and then for the law-abiding thing, all they have to do is make different laws, make things like saying something mean on Twitter or anti-establishment illegal. Now you're suddenly in the camp of non-law-abiding citizen, and they can disarm you.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to be aware of those sort of tactics as well.
Yeah. And in the past, it was always, if something wronged you, you go out to a media outlet and you tell them what's going on. That way people can know about it. And usually when that exposure just makes it so the people who are in the wrong kind of like, okay, we can't have this bad press and have this taken to court. So we'll just do a settlement type of thing.
Nowadays, the media just smears you.
Yeah. But thank you for coming on, AbsoluteKaty. I put your Twitter and your YouTube channel. I'm not sure if I have you on Gab or on Steemit. If you could send
I'm the same on every platform. It's
okay.
AbsoluteKaty.
Spelled exactly the same?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's not absolute like the vodka. I'm not standing for
Then you would definitely be a Russian.
Yes, definitely, right?
All right. Thank you very much. Feel free to join at any time. Like, I think the buddy system is great. Definitely have a buddy system with everyone who comes on here. James, Man and Talk with James, he also does this, same as Ryan Bannock from Australia, and David Denton from Independent Outsider. So I'm sure he's working. He's probably like kicking himself not being able to come on and talk. But anyways, thank you, and we'll definitely see you around. Hopefully we see a lot more videos.
Yeah, I'm trying. I really want to produce more videos. It's just, you know, time permitting, energy permitting. Yeah, but it's really nice to talk to you. Thank you so much for having me on. This was a great conversation, and I hope to do more like it.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, bye.
So everyone that's on, we're going to move over to James Man and Talk show, because we don't want to keep overlapping like this. All right.
What do? I just hit stop video?
Yeah, I'll end it so it ends it for everyone.
Oh, okay. All right.